everyone. Today I wanted to share 5 weird childhood fears I had growing up as a Korean adoptee. This is not speaking on behalf of the entire adoptive community. This is just my own, some of my own weirder kind of fears I had as a child. So number 1, that I'd be taken away from my family. And more specifically, that my birth family was going to come back out of nowhere and take me away from my adoptive family. So Asian people in my community were so few and far between that when I saw Asian people in a store or, I would get my parents to try to avoid that aisle. Or for instance, I grew up Catholic, which is a different story for a different day. But I was an altar girl for a time, and I would find myself scanning the church, scanning the pews for Asian people, which there usually were not any. But if there was, then I would want my family to leave right after the service and not socialize, stay and socialize after for fear of running into them. I never really voiced this fear of mine with my parents, and I don't really know why. This was probably a concern of mine early primary school years. I don't know exactly when I would have outgrown it or kind of not been fearful of that kind of abduction. Okay, so number 2, fear of Asian topics. If there was going to be a unit on Asia in let's say world history or social studies or something like that, I would dread school every day until that topic or that unit was over. And it was just in one class out of the whole school day. But I would just dread it all day long. And then after the class even happened, I would relive any awkward moments that happened from that class, well after it was over. So, growing up in such a non-diverse community, I was often the only non-white person in the room in any situation. And then to have the focus of the class or that whatever was being on Asian anything, and it was assumed you could relate to it or knew something more about the topic, because I looked like I should know more about it. It was just, I dreaded it so much. And I think actually what made it worse is I think a part of me was really interested in it, but I didn't want to show any interest in it. I didn't want to draw any attention to myself, which now looking back is a little sad to me. Number 3, fear of disagreement. I never wanted to disagree with others, even if I had a strong differing opinion on the matter. I hate to admit it, but I don't think I would have had the strength to stand up for something that was wrong for fear of racial bullying, racial retaliation, because that race was going to come up. And if I was going to be the one to step in and stand up to somebody who's wronging someone else or doing something wrong, that was going to be thrown right in my face, first thing. So it was just easy, low-hanging fruit for people to use at will. Sometimes I could have been walking down the hall and older kids pass by and, yell Jap or Chink or something like that. And so basically my school existence, I never wanted attention drawn to myself, if at all possible. I wish I was a stronger kid mentally. And I think because I internalized a lot of my struggles and anxieties, I never really let anyone know when stuff was bothering me. Number 4, fear of immigration issues. So growing up in the Northeast, my schools and my classes had a lot of trips to Canada for different things. And when I was younger, for sure, it always gave me so much anxiety to cross the border because a part of me would always worried I wouldn't be let back into the States or that it would cause a scene and they'd have to do additional background checks on me or something like that, in front of all my classmates or the school or whatever. And it was just one more fear of being singled out, for the way I looked. Even as an adult, when I was booking our trip to Korea, my best friend is Korean adopted, and I remember trying to convince her to book the trip with us and to come, and we would go and have this amazing luxury vacation, and we would just explore our birth country together with our husbands, and it would just be amazing. And she could not be convinced, and she was really against it actually. And then she finally kind of came out and told me why. And she was a little embarrassed by it and kind of laughing when she finally told me. And this is my best friend, and we're both Korean adopted. She finally said I have this underlying fear that I won't be let back into the States. She didn't think that she would be able to really enjoy the trip with that kind of lurking in the background. And she acknowledged that it's not like a rational fear. You know, she's like, you know, I know I'm American. I have an American passport. I've traveled internationally before. It's not an issue. This is still a thing for her. Going back to Korea well into adulthood. And I get it. And we all have like messed up internalized fears and trauma that most of us have never like addressed or worked through, or may not even know we have, you know. So anyway, number 5, racial assumptions. So, all right, here are a few. You must be really good at math. Do you eat dog? Do you know martial arts? Do you know kung fu? Ching ching chong. What'd I just say? Oh my gosh. So that's just like a few of the ridiculous, right? So for instance, I've always been an animal lover. And I remember talking with a classmate in grade school, and probably like first or second grade. And he asked me like, oh, what's your favorite animal? And I answered, oh, I love dogs the best. And he asked if I love them as pets or to eat. And I can guarantee if I were anyone else in that class, that would not have been the next follow-up question. and I don't even think he was trying to be mean, but it caught me so off guard. And at the time, I didn't even realize that like anyone like consumed dogs for food. So that sticks out in my mind. Other racial assumptions, I remember being always in an accelerated math class growing up. And it happened to be my dad was math educator, so he for the state standardized testing board or whatever. And so he was known in the schools. So even though people knew I was adopted, knew I was not blood related to my dad, who was a whiz at math, still always put me in accelerated math classes. They assumed I had to be some kind of math wizard. So yeah, to this day I have a deep-seated hate for math my whole life. Anyway, those were just 5 weird oddball fears that I had like growing up as a Korean adoptee. And they're not the same for everyone. These were just a couple that stick out to me as a kid. I'm sure I could do a whole other video on adult fears growing up as a Korean adoptee, and those would be less appropriate and I'm sure a lot more of them actually. So anyway, let me think about that. Subscribe if you like this kind of thing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.